Welcome to the St. Augustine Chronicles. I'm Karen Zander, and today, as my guest, I'm so excited to have Karen Stern. Karen's got a really interesting history, and I know that you might not think it's interesting, but I'm very interested to learn more about what you've done in your life and what you're passionate about. So, Karen, you didn't grow up in St. Augustine. When did you come here?
I came here in 1984. So I've been here for longer than I've ever lived any one other place in my life. So
That happens.
yeah,
It's just so
yeah.
easy to live here. It's such
hmm
a special place. When
Yeah.
you think about, well, where could I go?
hmm
Nothing stacks up,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and that's one reason that I came here too. I had just done like 3 or 4 months on a touring around with a student group. I was younger at that time. Around Europe, and this had such a European flair to it in St. Augustine that I just naturally, gravitated here.
What were you doing in Europe?
I was actually the camp cook for a geologic field camp for the for the University of
How do you,
South Mississippi.
how do
Yeah.
you get a gig like that?
I don't know. I got lucky. It was great. I loved it. I got to go. We were staying in it was in the summer, so we stayed for the most part. Of course, we toured around a lot before going to the camp, which we were there for like 6 weeks. But it was wonderful because we were staying in a ski resort, and
A ski
so
resort in
yeah,
Europe.
right. But in the summer, so there was no snow.
Yeah, but
But we
still.
could, yeah. And so I had use of a little Volkswagen that I could drive down to Bamberg. We were in Oberbamberg. I think you know German,
I
right?
do, yeah.
Yeah. So we were above Bamberg, and I would drive down to the bakery every day too. And oh, that was wonderful.
Yeah,
And
those German bakeries are
yeah,
fantastic.
got to know the baker, and well, we were actually in Switzerland, so the German side of Switzerland. But I got to know the baker, and he would leave little treats for me outside when I would pick up the. It was nice.
So do you mind if I ask, how were you you must have been in your early 20s then?
How old was I? I was in my late 20s. Yeah.
So mom and dad didn't, I mean, great gig.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Well, I was already out, on my own, so it was just a really nice opportunity to travel around, and then coming back to the U.S., I just had an opportunity to go somewhere, and so as I say, St. Augustine was very appealing because it had that same kind of flair or flavor. So
So what was it that brought you here? What opportunity brought you here?
just going somewhere. I want.
Sounds like you created
Yeah,
your
right,
opportunity, right?
Just living in Florida, I guess. I don't know. But at the time, 1984, the bank was, well, there were actually a couple of banks, but Barnett Bank which was an autonomous, it was not a statewide bank, but it was just kind of a local bank, and I went to work for them in the marketing department, and then I ended up in as the training director for Barnett Bank, and that's actually how I met my husband. So
Oh, good.
yeah,
So is he didn't grow up here, did he?
no, he didn't, but he came in I think the late '70s, and he's from Cleveland, so he had gone to Bowling Green University. We have these debates about football too. By the way, I'm a University of Alabama grad alum.
I've learned not to
So
debate football with
no,
Alabama fans.
no, it's in Alabama. Football is religion,
Yeah.
so you don't talk about
Yeah.
it. So, uh, yeah,
I've
really.
learned.
Good.
Don't touch my football.
Don't touch my football. Um, but he grew up in Cleveland, graduated from Bowling Green with an education degree, and he was teaching in a small town just to the west of Cleveland. And his mom and dad had moved down for retirement to Jacksonville, and his father said, "Come on down here. There's a great university where you can get your master's degree, and just kind of get away from the snow for a while because it obviously was.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never lived up in
I
a
have.
snow belt, so
I have.
so he came down and went through a master's program at Jacksonville University, and was also teaching at Clay, or what was it, Clay, the Country Day School in Clay County.
Jacksonville Country Day.
Yeah, and so he really through his master's program, his internship was with the Jacksonville Police Department or the sheriff's office, And I don't know why and how that happened, but he was just kind of interested in that. And then he's an excellent instructor, and in my opinion, of course, I'm very partial to him. But
as well, you should be.
But he after that he moved, and I think started working in. I guess he was still teaching some in Jacksonville, but then he moved to Ponte Vedra and started teaching at that time the Criminal Justice Training Institute, or the where you get your law degree or law
enforcement certification, maybe, or something.
Yeah. That was at the Technical Center, and so he started teaching there part-time as well. And then the sheriff at that time, see, we go way back. I feel like we go way back. The sheriff at that time was Francis O'Loughlin, and so he kept trying to hire Les, my husband. And so he finally was successful in that, and Les just went into law enforcement then. And, I always thought, he's such a great educator and so knowledgeable in that. What is he doing at the sheriff's office? But he actually worked, I think, at the same time that I came here to St. Augustine, Neil Perry was running for sheriff for his first term.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when he was elected, Les went into helping to put together a youth resource program. So Les was very instrumental in that. And that's a wonderful, very full-time program that we have in our schools now. He also worked with the Neighborhood Watch program, and he really was very instrumental in bringing a lot of things into the sheriff's office and under their control. Then they during that time with Neil Perry, he was very interested in getting an accreditation program for law enforcement for the sheriff's office. So they went out for national accreditation, and Les was kind of put in charge of the accreditation because of his education background. So
right.
It really made a lot of sense. Yeah. But the way I met him is as training director, I was putting together security training at the bank. And he and one of the city police department officers had a security training program that they had put together for tellers and the personnel in the bank. I don't know what they're called now, personal bankers and customer service.
Well, they're non-existent now.
Yeah, right.
They're on the other end of the phone now.
That's true. That's true, aren't they? Yeah, even the drive-through.
Yeah, you can't talk to anyone anymore.
Right. So anyway, they put together that, and so I had, contacted the sheriff's office to come in and give us a training program, and so he and I both actually did something we always said we wouldn't do, and that was to get involved with someone through work that you work with, So
well, you didn't actually work at the same company, so
yeah, right,
that
exactly.
was okay.
So
where was Barnett Bank then?
Barnett Bank was where Bank of America on the corner of King and Cordova, or Cathedral Place in Cordova.
Yeah.
So that's where I worked. And then, interestingly, we started growing, Barnett did, and so we were running out of office space, and it was, there's a building behind what was the mall. I don't know what's even there anymore, but there's a building behind on Old Moultrie Road that was built by our bank, Barnett Bank, as an operations center. So in the process, while that was being built, they had to put people in some other offices away from this Cathedral Place location. And I had an office on like the 4th or 5th floor of what was then the First Union building.
Which building is that?
That's where the Treasury is.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, that was an Atlantic bank to begin with, I think. So.
I feel like everybody I know has had an office in there at one point.
Yeah, right. Right, exactly.
I talk to so many people that say, "Oh yeah, I had an office in the."
It's beautiful though when you're up. I mean, the view is. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, I used to go to a massage therapist, and she had a suite up there, and that was just it was just amazing.
And see, I don't even know if they do that anymore. I mean, do they still have offices?
They have
there?
tenants. Yeah, they do. Interesting short story about that building is, Jerry Dixon was a good friend of mine, and Jerry said to me, you can always tell when people arrived in St. Augustine because each kind of generation of new locals calls that building something else because it's been so many things.
Right.
So now we call it the Treasury
Mhm.
Building, but it's been all the banks. And so he said, if you talk to somebody who's been here a while, they'll call it this bank.
Yeah.
So that's interesting for that building.
It is interesting. And there's so much that has changed. I know we had talked about that earlier. And, I left, when I left Barnett Bank, I left to become, my my background and my degree is in social work, so I really felt like I wanted to get back into that type of work, but not really doing therapy and not getting too deeply into it. But an opportunity came up to be director of the Retired Senior Volunteer Program, which I felt it's a nonprofit and actually a federal program, and I just felt like it was a good opportunity, and I really truly loved that so much. I got to know a lot of very active, vibrant seniors during that time, and hope that I'm like that now. So they were good role models. But during that, I would have, we'd have different events with them, and I would always talk about how many of you remember, and when you could go down King Street, take a left on to go south on US 1 and not hit another traffic light until you got to Palm Coast. And they would all go, yeah, I remember that. I mean, that's how long ago this was. And then one by one, those traffic lights started going in. One by one, all that development started happening. We now have so much as you go south.
Yeah.
It is just like, 312, forget about it. The traffic is just awful now. So they say that is one of the most congested intersections.
Oh, sure it is.
And probably in the state. I don't know. I know it is for this part of Florida.
So how did you get into politics? You first ran for the school board, is that right?
That's correct. That was in 1994. And as I say, I was director of the Retired Senior Volunteer Program, and we then, it's a federal program, but they require a sponsorship. And in the beginning, I was with United Way. United Way was sponsoring the program, and then we moved to the school board. The school board took it over, and so
that's interesting.
Well,
the school board took it over.
Yeah, well, they combined it with the. It kind of made sense after. I know at first it was like, what? Why would that be? They're
Is
kids.
It because there were so many people going into the schools to volunteer?
They had and still have a huge school volunteer program, so they wanted to really bring in, that professionalism and expertise in volunteer programs. So I went there, and because I was at the administration, the Orange Street building.
Yep.
And in administration, there was just a lot of people who would come to me and say, we really need to have someone who cares on the school board. I mean, I really had a lot of people saying, we really need to, and I don't want to use names, but the incumbent at the time was thought to be not really caring and proper about the school policies and regulations and what was going on. So,
well, that's interesting in itself, because why would you be on a school board if you weren't really prepared to be passionate about the what you serve for?
Right, exactly, exactly. Well, I know, and as a matter of fact, to me, it was like, as a school board member, even running to be a school board member, it's like you're asking people to trust you with their most valuable assets, their money and their children.
Right.
So that's the way I ran anyway, and so was successful with that. And as I say, Jerry Dixon, a good friend of both of ours. I know you're very close to Jerry, and when I first met him was when I was running for school board. So we ran together for the first time.
I'm sure if I know Jerry like I think I do, he told you how to run your campaign and what to stand for.
Actually, he was cute. He would say, "You did really well." At these. This was in the day when they would have a lot of different things for all candidates, all political candidates, not just for one particular, like the county commission. I think now the League of Women Voters, they really try to get those upper races in for their debates. I don't even know if they're having any this year, but
I haven't seen any.
Well, it's difficult to have virtual debates, I think. So
But everything was really grassroots then.
everything was
There was no social
grassroots.
media, there was no
That's right.
internet, so you had to
And I know
go out and
the
about.
record would have like uh, rallies, and they typically would have them at the plaza downtown, and that was really a lot of fun. So you'd get up there and introduce yourself and just give a 2-minute blurb about what you were doing.
I can't even imagine that
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
That's
I know.
so old school
Well, it was
in a good way.
it was great. Those were the days. It's just not the same anymore.
Yeah,
I
it's really difficult to actually know your candidate now, even though there's more accessibility in some ways
Right.
because they're out there on social
Mhm.
media
Mhm.
and everything else. You don't really
Right.
get the opportunity to truly get to know, connect, talk with them. so much.
Exactly. And one thing I was thinking as I was coming here this morning was because you had indicated you wanted to talk a little bit about my service on the county commission, and I'm thinking, I don't really. Those were the days that you knew everybody. You knew the clerk at the courts. You knew the sheriff. You knew all the constitutional officers. I don't know them anymore, and because I don't think we are given really good opportunity
Right.
to hear from those candidates.
Right. There's not the face-to-face
Right.
access to get to know someone.
Right.
And it's so one-sided when you do know them because
Mhm.
it's the message that you're seeing at that moment put out
Right.
by whomever's putting it out, right?
That's
There's
right.
not a lot of back and forth and truly
Yeah.
digging in.
Yeah.
So how long were you on the school board?
So I was on the school board for one term, 1994 to 98. I left because by choice, because I was running for state representative. So
And what were the schools 94 to 98? So it was getting crowded here, right? Were they still
Yes.
having they had probably started by that time having trouble keeping up with the influx of residents.
right, it was beginning to get crowded. We when I first began, we had 2 high schools. St.
Well,
August-
I apologize.
That's all right. We had St. Augustine High School, and we had
Sorry,
I
that's a
didn't-
first.
I didn't even hear it. So
Sorry.
so as I say, when I first went on to the school board, we had 2 high schools, St. Augustine High School and Nice, and so we also had our very first appointed superintendent of schools. Prior to that, we had elected superintendent of school, and so our first appointed was leaving at the time that I went on to the school board. He was leaving, and so we were going through a superintendent search, and the person that we brought in then came. One of the things that I did on the school board was to have town hall meetings with my parents, and school boards are single member districts, so you just kind of work for your district. And so I would
Actually
have,
didn't know that. That's helpful.
yeah, I would have town hall meetings. We had already built Bartram Middle School, so I would have town hall meetings down there. It was just really important for me to hear from the parents. I mean, I was a parent of students as well. I wanted to be heard, and that was one of the reasons that I did run for school board, because I just feel like it's important that parents have a voice.
That's such a novel concept that your constituents have a voice.
Yeah, right. So then I had a lot of mothers, a group, who very intelligent, just energetic women who came in, and they were real concerned about the crowding in the high schools. They said that because the word had been put out by the new superintendent coming in that we would be able to open one new high school, and so they said, well, we know that they're talking about putting it up in the Julington Creek area, but we feel like we need one here too. St. Augustine High School was getting very crowded, and they were just having some issues because of the crowding. And so these mothers were real concerned about it, and what we deserve a high school too, just as much as they do up there. So I said, look, I think I agree with you, but I feel like what you can do is to put together the data and the information, bring some statistics, put together a plan,
Right. Make your case.
Yeah, make your case, put it together, and at the next town hall meeting, I want you to give a presentation about that so that everyone can then get on board and really, because what you have to do is just really show the information and
Right.
make your case
Right.
to the school board. They're the ones who are going to decide. So the new superintendent of schools had come in at the same time, was just new into the county, and I invited him to come to the town hall meeting because I said, you need to meet these parents. They need to meet you too. It's good for you to get to know them. And I said, and they are going to give a presentation about the need for a high school in the southern part of the county. I was District 3 down in the south. And so he said, okay. He comes in. I introduced him, let him just give welcoming words, and he said, when we are looking at a new high school, there'll only be one.
Oh, knowing that they were going to present.
Yeah, in the northwest part of the county. Well, I had a record number of people at this meeting. 250 people showed up.
Wow. For just a town hall meeting.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And so then these parents gave a beautiful presentation, and I just have to say that they are to be credited for what they did, because the superintendent then left at the meeting saying, we will be looking at the need for a high school in the south part
what
of
a
the
win
county.
that was.
Mhm. So that's how we got Pedro Menendez. And so those parents are the ones who made it happen.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
You don't
It was-
often hear stories about citizens who can make
Mhm.
change. Often it's just that they
Right.
try and
Right.
they don't get anywhere.
Mhm. I know. I've considered that to be one of the most successful things that I saw and had
Absolutely.
helped to happen when I was on the school board. So
Go back to the superintendent. Why did they change from elected to appointed? What was the reasoning behind that? Do you know?
To take politics out of the position, because and I think it was really the right thing to do. And the trend around the state was to go with appointed superintendents rather than elect. We were one of the only few counties who still had elected superintendents. I will say, though, our last elected superintendent, Otis Mason, was the best.
Well, he got a school named after him, so
Yeah, he was wonderful. And I know I told my husband, I always said, I want to work for Otis Mason someday. And so, I ended up
did,
at the school. So,
right?
yeah, at the school board.
So after the school board, you ran for county commission.
After the school, I ran a couple of times for state rep. So, close, tight races, but that's how I got to know a lot of state personnel, and the governor at the time was Jeb Bush. I got to know him very well, and I also became very familiar with how state legislation is handled and how you go about getting attention at the state level. So it made a lot of sense when I ran for county commission then, that that was one of the strengths that I had, and positives that I could bring to that position.
Yeah.
Was
To
that
understand how to get
yeah.
it done at a bigger level.
And I actually knew a lot of the people very well. It's all of them gone now. Jim King and Don Davis, and they were very in East Florida. They were very. Jim King, as a matter of fact, was president of the Senate for a couple of years.
That's a big stretch, though, to go from a really, truly grassroots style of school board to go to campaign on a state level.
Yeah.
That's a very different type of race.
Yes.
That took a lot of gumption.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. Well, it was important, and as I say, I think it really gave me, I gained a lot from it. It gave me a lot of experience in, as I say, in how things work at the state level, which is so important when you're in a local position.
So when you ran for county commission and you won your seat, were there many females who had been on the St. Johns County Commission prior to you?
Well, there had been a few. There was, I don't recall everyone's names.
There can't have been that many.
I know there were a couple of females in the Ponte Vedra, District 4 positions, and District 3, Barbara. I can't remember her name. I'm sorry, I shouldn't even say it.
It was prior to me
right.
really paying attention to politics, so I don't know.
She was in District 3, and as there just weren't that many. You're right. And we never had like more than one at a time, which when you consider 54% of the voters are women, why is it you don't have a representative group on the county commission, you know?
Well, I mean, I can tell you personally, I found it difficult as a female to break into some
Yeah.
of the long-standing traditions here. Let's
It
just say it that way.
it
There are barriers. Let's just say it that way.
I'm going to agree with you on that.
They're there.
Yeah. Yeah. We have that disadvantage being
Mhm.
female, which does not seem right. But then you look at nationally, it's the same.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So,
But all the time I'm saying, why is it we have, you know, the makeup that we do? We are not a very diverse. We don't have a diverse commission. So
right. And other
I'm
boards
sorry.
are not diverse,
Mhm.
not just the commission.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think that's because it's difficult. Again, it's difficult to run. It's
Mhm.
and I think now probably even more so than when you ran, because social media can just be brutal. I truly applaud anyone who runs for elected office, whether I agree with them, whether I even like them as a person. I
Mhm.
applaud them for stepping up and doing that, because what social media has done to our election races
Mhm.
is just terrible, I think.
I agree, Karen. I just think that people have been made to feel that they can say and do just about anything, and I think it's just really wrong. It's very troubling, but
Yeah.
I'm hoping that things will get better.
I think often that people who might be good at doing the job
Mhm.
don't want to put themselves up for something like
Right.
that, because,
That-
they've got businesses, they
Mhm.
can't take the social media hits that come.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think a lot of them are not deserved.
Yeah.
The running people through the
I will tell you,
ringer.
it was very difficult, and I had some really rough times. And not only, and I really worried about my family. And
Well, you had young
mhm,
kids.
mhm, yeah, so it was tough.
Are you glad you ran?
Yes, I am. And to go back to the positive things that are successes that I feel like I was able to achieve.
Because when were you actually appointed to the county commission?
I was elected to the county commission in 2002.
And
Gosh, that's a long time ago.
And for a 4-year term, or did you run
For a 4-year term. Yeah.
That was when the county was really starting to take off.
It was really booming.
So there
Mhm.
had to be some very big policy
Mhm.
changes that were happening
Mhm.
during that time. That's a pivotal time.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And well, one of the things back to the school board for a minute. One of the things that I was chairman of the school board my first year on, and I would get phone calls from people saying that why are you building? We were building schools, right? Why are you not putting sidewalks in, or why are you not doing this? And I'm thinking we need to work with the county on these kinds of things, and there did not seem to be the communication. So I suggested, and we started or began at that time having joint meetings with the school board members and the county commission.
It just seems so logical.
Yeah. I don't know if they're still doing it, but I know that we did it the entire time I was on, and then they were continuing to do it. And when I was on the county commission, not as regularly, but we did meet some, because I had said, what happened to these joint meetings, So then that to me is so important, the communication, the town hall meetings, when you really meet with your constituents. I mean, and not only that, but you got to meet with the other governing boards.
Yeah.
You're working
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
And I know one of the things that we seemed to do well, too, was work with the city. And I don't know that there's that camaraderie now.
I don't feel like there is. I'm not,
Yeah.
in the meetings, but from an outsider standpoint, it
Mhm.
very much feels like there's often an adversarial
Right.
relationship between the county and the city of St. Augustine, and even
Right.
the city of St. Augustine Beach, I think, has somewhat of an
Right.
adversarial relationship with the
Mhm.
county. And I agree, what a shame.
Yeah, it is a shame. I mean, aren't we all in this together?
Yeah.
So,
So what are some of the things that I'm looking back at 2002 through 2004, was Nocatee permitted during that time?
it was permitted before
Just
I
before?
became a commissioner. Mm-hmm.
I mean, because like I said, there must have been just major things happening.
There were a lot of DRIs that came before us when I was on the county commission. We one of the ones that we did approve was the Rivertown and the Durban and Durban. What was it? It was two. It was so huge, and they have actually put in a lot of infrastructure. That was one of the things that the commission that I was on, really worked hard at. Kind of forcing. They used to say that we were, really too hard on them, but
no one says that anymore, though.
No.
No one says that the county commission is too hard on developers anymore. So
no,
maybe that's a good thing that you were hard on them.
I think it's really important. We really wanted to make sure that they were providing the infrastructure, and we would require it before they started putting one house in. You know.
So that right there, why did that doesn't appear to be happening? It appears that the county's playing catch up now. Yeah. How did that change, or why?
I don't know.
Because that's what you hear from residents all the time. Mm-hmm. Why are we always playing catch up with these big developments? Mm-hmm. And the schools as well. The schools are always behind in the population.
And we really worked with the developers and, give us a site, donate a site for a school, because you're going to be bringing in all these students. There's going to be a need for a school. So give us a site for that. Give us a site for a fire station, because you are going to need that. Those type of services are essential. You have to have those. So, work with us here. You want to come in and develop and make this community, then make it a livable community,
Karen, I think that right there is such an important point that I hope that people who are on the county commission now hear from you, who has you have the experience, you've done it, that it is possible to require developers to do those things up front and to look at the big picture growth that they'll bring in.
Right.
Because I personally don't feel like they're doing that, and I just hear so many residents saying that they don't feel like that's happening.
I don't know, and I'm really sad to have to admit that I have not paid really close attention, because
it's hard.
I'm retired now.
So sometimes after you do something you don't want to know anymore,
right.
It's a little bit too painful.
Right. But I will say that I supported Paul Waldron when he ran the first time, and of course supported him this time as well. And I feel like he's really and I had the opportunity to talk with him a lot when he was running his first campaign. And so I know that and his father, Harry Waldron, who I know very well, his father was a county commissioner as well.
Yeah,
so back in the day, before there was so much development and growth. But I think Paul really does pay attention and tries. But when you're a body of 5, you sometimes have some tough discussions, and you just kind of don't get heard.
Yeah, so. It's easy to marginalize someone on those boards.
Exactly.
I agree. Well, I hope that they somehow hear this and take it from someone who's been there, that it is possible, because I think that they would have so much constituent support. That I think is just a big thing that we hear. And I'm in real estate, so I'm out there. I see these DRIs, I see these big massive PUDs, and I see the effects. I'm in them, showing homes all the time.
Right.
And I see the schools with all of the portables. I'm all over the county seeing those.
Yeah. I know. I just can't. I find it hard to believe how much growth there is going on now. I mean, Les and I, my husband and I, were, when that comet, I can't remember the name of it now, the comet that had a certain amount of time you could go out at night and see. And so we wanted to go see the comet. And so I said, we need to go somewhere where there aren't any lights. So we both agreed that we should drive out somewhere. So we go out. I said, let's go out toward the Ag Center down County Road 208. There's no houses down there. It'll be great. So we get to Passetti Road, where I said, we'll turn on Passetti Road. We can pull off somewhere and watch the comet. There are no houses here. I'm telling you, there was so much traffic, and I thought, where are these people going? Is everybody going out to look at the comet? No, they all live out there.
Yep.
It's unbelievable.
Yep. And Silverleaf is coming in.
That's when I thought, yes, Silverleaf. That was one that was approved when I was on the county commission. As a matter of fact, it's changed a lot, though. So.
People don't realize how early or how much prior to the coming out of the ground these DRIs are actually permitted, these developments of regional impact.
Right.
You know, they think that they're done and then the shovels go in the ground, but 10, 15 years of sitting there until they can get their funding and get it all
That was
lined up.
a very interesting development too, and discussion that we had with them. I know I sat with one of the principals for the Hudson Company who was working on that DRI, and because we really wanted to have a really substantial affordable housing.
Oh gosh, Karen, I feel
Part
like
of
it's
that.
time for you to run again.
No,
Because everything you're bringing up,
No, listen,
that's what people want to
that's
hear
the
from
thing.
their.
Affordable housing is very important, and that was one of my issues that I really worked hard on when I was on the county commission. And I just feel like there's not that much going on. Now, I
No, there
support fully Bill Lazar and what he's doing with the St. John's Housing Partnership. And I know now.
But he's got a really tough road.
Yeah, he does. But I know he does. He seems pleased with a new development that's going in with multifamily housing for affordable housing,
Right.
which means, I guess, apartments.
Yeah.
I don't think that fully addresses the affordable housing, but hey,
It's better than nothing.
he
and,
supports
yeah.
it, so that makes me happy. I know that it must be a good move, but I just think there's so much more that can be done. And going back to how my state contacts helped, we were working with West Augustine residents and trying to bring some sewage connection to them rather than the septic tanks.
And that's still the
it's
discussion
still
today.
the discussion. But we were able to go to the state. Who was it? Senator then for Senator, I can't remember. But we were able to go to the state and really work with him to bring in about $500,000 check at one point in time to work with the city to address that. And see, that's one of the things in West Augustine. It's county, but the city provides the services to them. So it's really tough. That's another reason that both boards need to really work together. And I'm hoping they do.
Well, that's such a hot topic now, and becoming more so because we learn more and more the effects of having septic tanks.
Right. Right.
So after your political career, you became very involved in your synagogue.
Right.
And I didn't know until recently. I'm very ignorant of it. I didn't know that there was a synagogue. I know now that there are several, but I had no idea that there was a Jewish place of worship, which also was very historical to our city.
Right.
I had no idea. Tell me about that.
It's very interesting, and we refer to it as the oldest synagogue in the nation's oldest city. And so a lot of people will come and say, "You're the oldest synagogue?" No, just here. So we like to claim that, But the congregation actually began in the 1800s, and when Jewish people from the founders were from Eastern Europe, and they came here, they actually brought the Torahs, which are our scrolls. They brought the Torahs, and they're older than the synagogue building itself or the congregation. They and there are a lot of people, family descendants of the founders who are still here.
We never hear about were they from Russia as well as Eastern Europe, or it must have all kind of been the same area. We never hear about those immigrants. I've never heard anything about Eastern Europeans or Russians coming to St. Augustine back in the 1800s.
Well, it's interesting, and we really need to work. We have someone now who newly elected to our board of trustees who she's one of the descendants of one of the founding families, and so she really is interested in doing the historical story, and she can go all the way back. The University of Florida has also, there is a Library of Judaism at the University of Florida. A lot of people don't know that.
I didn't know that, no.
But they have a lot of the history as well of our synagogue and our congregation and those members here. in town. There's one you can access it orally. They have an oral history. We also have it all printed out. And I've learned so much from that about what the way. It's much about what we've been talking about with St. Augustine. The way that it was like 50, 60 years ago. So anyway, to go back, I'm trying to make this clear. But
we should say we're talking about the First Congregation Sons of Israel Synagogue.
Right. It's at 161 Cordova Street.
So it's in the historic district.
It's in the historic district, exactly. And so the building itself is beautiful, and it's the only existing example of Mediterranean Baroque architecture in town too. And that's something that Jerry Dixon, our friend, was really interested in, and he wanted to make sure that we could maintain that and keep the building and the architectural integrity of it. So,
and we should just say that Jerry was an architect who worked
right.
on the project for you.
Right, and he did a wonderful job. So, and it's because of his interest in and all the work that he's done, that he did in St. Augustine with historic buildings. And
right.
Yeah.
He was very passionate about making sure that the building fit the site, or that he respected the building's history. That was one of the things, or two of the things that he was very passionate about. So
in the beginning, when these residents were here, they actually had to go to Yulee, Florida, to get
Yulee.
they had to go to Yulee to bring Jews down so they could have a minyan. You have to have a minyan in order to have a real service.
No, so tell me,
a minyan is like 10. At that time, it was 10 men,
of course,
who were bar mitzvahed, who were Jewish, and they would, you had to have that 10 in order to have any kind of service, and so they would go to Yulee to bring them down. Anyway,
that's
they
Yulee.
Finally,
What the heck?
I don't know why, how they got there. I don't know, but eventually the members, the number of Jewish people grew. And, of course, they all married and had children. So, they started a real community right here. And interestingly, we have found that they lived in the area because at that time, they were all very Orthodox. Being Orthodox is like the real conservative, ultra-Orthodox part of Judaism, where you, on the Sabbath, which begins at sundown on Friday, ends at sundown on Saturday. You don't do any type of work at all. You don't drive, so they would walk. They wanted to be close enough to walk to services. The women would sometimes have to hire non-Jewish people to like turn on their stoves and do their cooking and all that kind of stuff. So you just didn't do anything on the Sabbath. But because of that, because they wanted to walk to services, they all lived in that area close to where the synagogue is, 161 Cordova. There were a lot of people on Cordova. There were a lot of people on Sanford. All the Lincolnville area was where the Jewish community lived.
Karen, this is, why do we not know this history?
I don't know. I mean, I only know parts of it. There's a lot more out there that I don't even know. And this is why it's really important that Suzanne Lichter Clark is really working. We hope that she's going to be able to help us bring this all together so that we can archive it. We really need to have it written. We need to document all of this.
Yeah, because we think of Lincolnville as being the historically black area, which it was, but I've never heard anything different. First off, I didn't know that there was a synagogue, as I said, until several years ago, and then I had no idea that there were Eastern Europeans who had come here to found it, and that they lived in that area of Lincolnville.
Yeah. It's interesting. As a matter of fact, where the synagogue is, where the building is, it was, and a lot of people know the name Max Jaffe, and he was one of our elders, or what we call a gabbai, at the synagogue. So he was a lay leader and really very involved and influential in the Jewish community. His family's house was right there. They gave up their house so that the synagogue could be built. There is an existing house next door, which was a Jaffe family house, and it's now I think it's several apartments. Across the street was a house where one of the Jewish families lived. So, I mean, it's just it's interesting. We learn more and more every day, and actually, the Historical Society Library is where you can go and get a lot more information than I'm able to tell you this morning. But we really need to work harder at it and just make a great presentation. And I think it would be something great to be in the newspaper even, about what part of the history of St. Augustine that we are.
Well, I can tell you that one of the reporters does watch this show, so
Good.
that may happen for you.
And so then once the family, they actually, there was a rabbi in the beginning, Tarlinsky. And Rabbi Tarlinsky and his wife were two of the founders. And they had business on, I think, Washington Street. And so they lived above the building, and they would have services there or in other houses because they didn't have a
building,
a synagogue. So in 1923, I guess they decided that they wanted to build a building, and they got some money, and they actually had a donation from Flagler's son, I think, or nephew. So they did get some Flagler money to help build the building.
Good for them.
And the architect for Henry Flagler was the architect for the building. Jerry found that very interesting too. So, but the building was built in 1924, and so we're close to 100 years old, and it's a beautiful, beautiful building. And as a matter of fact, we've got some of the most gorgeous stained glass windows.
I was going to ask you about that.
And they're actually older than the building. Those windows were in a synagogue in Atlanta that was being torn down. And in 1950-something, see, my husband knows these dates a lot better than I do. I think it's about 1954. The daughters of Rabbi Tarlinsky, 3 daughters, they heard about this building being torn down, and they made arrangements to have those windows packed up and shipped down here and installed in the building. So they're from like 1800s. And a few years ago, back in the early 2000s, like 2012 or so, we were really worried about the windows. They looked like they were showing some age. We were afraid we were going to lose some of them, so we really went out to find someone to restore the windows. And we had a bar mitzvah b'nai mitzvah, which is 2 young girls were from Gainesville were being bat mitzvahed. And one of the family members who was there, my husband was there too, and one of the family members said, I know these windows. And so Les said, well, we're really looking for someone to help us restore because we're worried about them, And he said, well, I can put you in touch with someone. So he gave him a name and a number of someone in Atlanta. These windows were made in Atlanta. So when Les called, it turned out that this man, still in the business, is the great-grandson of the man who made the windows.
What are the chances of that?
So, we just knew that this was a real sign,
Yeah.
And so he came. He was so excited to be able to work on his great-grandfather's windows.
Of course.
He even
what an opportunity
He even
him.
had, Les tells this story about how he came in with this folder, and he opened it up with dust flying, and it was the original stencils that his great-grandfather had made of the windows, which was beautiful. We also had like 2 or 3 boxes of broken glass, and I knew that they were from the windows, but I just didn't know how they got there. Well, when they installed the windows, some of the panes or pieces broke, so they would just put in just a plain color, or something to try to get the windows up.
Just to make it work.
So these women and people of the synagogue had kept this glass all those years, thank goodness. And then when the gentleman came in to restore the windows, he was able to send those pieces back to Atlanta to have those reproduced per his great-grandfather's stencils. So we have got beautiful restored windows, and they're back to the original state. And so back to the glass, the broken glass, when we were working on, once we had already started working with Jerry Dixon and Jeremy Marquis on
Jeremy Marquis.
Marquis, yeah, on on restoring the building.
So Jerry was the architect and Jeremy was the landscape
Right,
architect.
yeah.
Mhm.
So the front of the building, which is
Mhm.
beautiful too,
Mhm.
Jeremy had a lot of input
Yeah,
in
he's
that.
very good.
Yeah, he is very good. So we were working with them, and we had worked with Jeremy on putting together a portfolio of getting some to raise some money and naming opportunities and this sort of thing. We had beautiful portfolio put together and had like a couple of hundred printed up, and then along came Matthew, and those we had the office in the front part of the building at that time, and that is what got flooded, and all of those portfolios were ruined. And so at the same time, we thought, well, we really need to do something now. Matthew really, it tore down our power. All the lines were under the building, so we really needed to do something. We were not, for 2 years, we were not open in the sanctuary. We would have services in the back side of the building, which we are now starting to begin construction on, or restoration on. But in the front, we just, really worked hard at making sure that it was good. And I think I was telling you earlier too that Jerry Dixon was wonderful in designing, and he really talked with us and would listen to what we wanted. And it was important to him, as it was to us, to maintain the historic integrity of the building too, to make sure that how we reopened would look very much like how it was in the beginning. And so through some accidental things that happened, like the plaster falling off the brick wall, we were able to get it back to that original brick wall. So, yeah, it's just beautiful what has been done. And Jerry did a fantastic job. We had to tear the plaster ceiling down to put the wiring up and we had no air conditioning there. So we now have air conditioning, and we had to put the HVAC in and all the ductwork in the ceiling. And what he designed to, instead of a flat ceiling, we now have a beautiful design with a lot of architectural features to it. And it's really gorgeous. And then we had mentioned to him that we would really want to maintain a star in the center of the sanctuary with the chandelier. I had gone to great lengths to get a chandelier that was handmade in 1903, and that worked so that we could hang it there, and we wanted the star around it. And so Jerry designed that, had it built, put up. It's beautiful. So it's just really gorgeous. But the glass, then, I kept saying, what can we do with this glass? And we just went on and on and on about it. Jeremy said, you really need some kind of color on the front of the building. And so we not only had part of it painted not white, but a darker color so that it would pop the frieze that's on there, which is beautiful. And people had not even noticed it until we did that. And then around the star, a local artist, Wendy McDaniel, who does beautiful mosaic work, she agreed to work with the broken glass to make a mosaic around the star over the door. So once you go by there and look, if you just look up over the door, the front door, you'll see that beautiful work and those gorgeous, the pieces of glass from those windows that's still there. And I couldn't think of a better way to display the broken glass.
I'm so grateful that you told me that, because now I will, when I walk by that building on my walks, I'll look at it differently.
Yeah.
Is the building open to the public to view?
Typically it is, but we've not been open since March
COVID.
20th.
Mhm.
Yeah. And but we still we have we welcome people to call or contact us and make arrangements to come by if they're interested in looking. So we'll be glad to do that. We do have CDC guidelines in place, though, so we just ask that people wear masks.
Of course.
And we have elderly members, and so it's very difficult for us to have in-person services right now, and people coming in. But yeah, tours of the building was something a very important way that we had of making money, to raising money for continued restoration and upkeep of the building. So it's really been difficult for us, and we have people who are from out of town and come here to visit, and they know about the building, but they want to come in and see it. So as I say, we welcome people to contact us. you can go to our website, as a matter of fact, and
Which is what?
it's First Congregation Sons of Israel.com, and go to the website and send us a message, about when you would like to come by. So we're not there all the time, but we are welcome. I mean, we're happy to go down and show it. I mean, we're proud of it, so glad to show it off.
And do you feel like you have been able to take enough measures to save it from hurricanes, flooding? Because it is in the part of town that's old and floods.
Right, right.
I'm sure that's, you want to save that building. You want to protect that building.
We do. And as a matter of fact, with Matthew, we got hit with Matthew, and then Irma came along and got us a year later. But with Matthew, it was 18 inches of water in the sanctuary. The Max Jaffe Hall, the back part of the building, is higher, so we were very lucky that we did not get water there. But in the sanctuary, so Matthew caused us to begin restoration. We lost all of our power, and so we were working on that. And then I immediately called FEMA to try to get some help from FEMA. And they referred us to the Small Business Administration disaster loan. So we did, for the first time, we have a mortgage on the building now. But it was really important for us to be able to do some immediate things, so disaster loan assistance helped us. But one of the things that they required of us was to get flood insurance. We did not have flood insurance because over 90 years we'd never had flood.
That was common. People didn't realize they needed it. Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the requirements we had, and they also wanted us to do some mitigation to help keep the water from coming into the building. A lot of it came in through the front door. So at the time, the front of the building, you just walked up to it and walked up steps to go in the front. A part of our mitigation and restoration was to build a plaza coming out from the door. And we also wanted to make it handicap accessible, more handicap accessible. So we have a ramp on the side up to the plaza, and then you can go in the front door. It's really much better. But that, raising the front, has really helped to prevent water from coming in. We also have some flood-proof doors, that we put up, very similar to the style that was there in the beginning, by the way. So we have that, and we also have a friend of the congregation who's been very generous in helping us with hurricane shutter type things. So we have some doors, flood doors they're removable, but you put them up in the event of a hurricane coming, like Matthew. So we have that, and also we have been able to, we have the crawl space with venting, so we've been able to block those off with vents.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that, because it's an incredible story that this congregation has been here so long, and that this synagogue is still here. So I'm glad to hear that you've been able to renovate it and that you've worked on ways to save it. But I do hope that your story gets out, because again, I have truly never heard anyone talk about any Jewish settlers who came here and founded a synagogue, and that they had a place in Lincolnville, that they were prominent in Lincolnville. So that's incredibly interesting to me, and I'm so thankful for you to share it.
Well, I appreciate very much your coming and wanting to talk about that, not just politics, but the synagogue as well, because it's very important.
I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
So, as you know, the social media we talked about can be brutal. So how do you feel about being a Karen right now?
Yeah.
It's awkward, isn't it?
Well, listen, I have 2 adult children. My daughter especially is really has been very active on social media, And so one of her very good friends that she grew up with, went to school with, I mean, we would carpool with her family a lot. And so she did, and then some other friends that my daughter went to high school with were doing these Karen things. And I thought, oh my gosh. And so I was talking to my daughter, and I said, I am so offended. It's going to take me a while before I like her post again, on Facebook. And she said, Mom, get over it. She says, that was one of the most popular boomer names. And I said, really?
I haven't met, I mean, I
listen,
haven't met that many of us.
When I was growing up, there were no Karens,
Yeah,
you know?
I didn't know anyone else.
so, so anyway, but I'm proud to be a Karen.
You know, I was just going to say, sometimes I tell people, like, to me, it's about just having something to stand for. And I don't know. If that's
it's funny because I just changed. I went to a new dermatologist this year for the first time. And when I called to make the appointment, they said, now, what is your name again? And so I told her, I said, but I'm a good Karen. So when I went into the doctor's appointment, the doctor even laughed at it. She says, yeah, she told me that you're a good Karen. So we had a big laugh about that. So it's, see, it can open some doors for you.
Well, thank you again for coming in. I know you didn't think that you had a story to tell, but you really did, and I'm so grateful.
Well, thank you, Karen, and I appreciate it very much, and thanks so much for insisting that I come. And I hope I didn't ramble too much.
No, it's the people who have everyday lives that to me are most interesting. You might not think your life is interesting, but you've made many contributions, so thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. All right, this has been another episode of the St. Augustine Chronicles, the where, the who, and the how'd they get there. Watch, like, or follow us on Facebook at St. Augustine Chronicles Podcast or at SA Chronicles. You can also find us on YouTube at St. Augustine Chronicles Podcast. Watch, listen. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes. And we are produced at Pete Melfi's The 904 Now Studio, so you can also find us on the 904 Now Facebook page. Be on the lookout for new shows dropping every Monday. Thanks for tuning in.